Hello, my name is Perez. I'm a member of the May 30th Alliance.
Antar Baker, member of the May 30th Alliance.
We are here today to discuss an event that happened last year in 2021 at Auburn High School. The brutal force, the near deadly force used by Rockford Police Department resource officer towards a freshman student at Auburn High School. Before we get into discussing different aspects of this case or different aspects of this incident or what happened to this child, I believe it's important for us to come to an understanding about the facts of the situation. There are certain things about this case, there are certain things about this incident that there's no room for debate anymore. It's on video. The people have talked about it. They're facts. They're proven. There's no room for debate. So unless you're coming to us with this understanding of the facts, unless you're coming to us with this understanding of the situation, then we can talk further. But if you are trying to dispute these facts, then you are clearly not based in logic. You are clearly not based in this unjust world that we currently live in. So the facts of this case: Parris Moore was a 14-year-old freshman at Auburn High School in 2021. Parris Moore was in the first 2 weeks of school. Police and school administrators told his grandmother that there was a struggle and Parris slipped and fell and hit his head. Police officers and school administrators kept the video from the family for over a month until the family acquired a lawyer that the video was released and they got to understand what happened to their child. That 2 months, almost 2 months. To this day, they have their only comment on it has been what the police officer told the grandmother that day, which was there was a little struggle and he slipped and fell. That's been the only police statement to this up to this point, up to this date. Only statement from any leader whatsoever. Let's see where we leave off. Okay. They kept it from the family for nearly 2 months, but they kept it out of the public eye for over a year. And once it was introduced to the public eye, it had to be introduced by an outside source. It had to be introduced by a news station in Chicago, no local stations. The video shows Rockford police officer Brad Lauer pick up this 14-year-old, 4'11", 140-pound freshman, pick him up over his head, double hook him over his head, pick him up and slam him onto the marble floor in the hallway of Auburn. There were multiple school administrators here to witness this. It looked like there were some students in the video as well here to witness this. This happened a year ago. Parris Moore would suffer a fractured skull, a minor struggle, a little struggle, a fractured skull, permanent brain damage. His lawyer came out, said he got having problems with his memory and his speech. For a little struggle. What caused this interaction was Parris Moore being a 14-year-old freshman, being out of class. How many of us are guilty of that same thing? How many of us have done that same thing? A 14-year-old freshman, brand new school, you're young, you're a kid, you're just outside of class on your phone. That is not a fractured skull is not a just punishment for that. And also a fact of this case is the history of Brad Lauer, who's involved in the death of a Rockford citizen in 2007, I believe, either 2007 or 2008. I'm sorry, the exact year is escaping me right now. But he was involved in the death of a Rockford community member in which he tased this community member in the back, got into a further little struggle with this police officer. Another police officer comes on scene and pepper sprayed this community member all over his face. This individual would die. And Brad Lauer is here today working in Auburn High School, working in a school, employed by the Rockford Police Department, making over $100,000 a year. Over $100,000 a year. Another fact of this case in the greater schemes of Rockford is, according to an article written by Karina Curry in 2019, that it costs our schools $1 million every year $1 million every year to employ these police officers in these schools, and 9 Rockford Police Departments, Rockford Police, they almost are Rockford Police schools. These almost are function as police state schools, but $1 million to have a police officer in a school. So I guess my first question to you would be, as somebody who attended Auburn, as somebody whose family has went to Auburn, what is just your first initial reaction to this, to seeing this video, and also to seeing the amount of staff that was present, the students that were present? What is just your initial reactions to the video?
Okay. Of course, like most people, well, I can't say most, but a lot of people that saw the video and were outraged. That's the first reaction. I was outraged for a number of reasons. First, for the young man, like you said, he was a freshman, and putting myself in his shoes as a freshman, you know, you're new to the school, you're probably not acclimated to the environment. Auburn is a very complex environment. We may get into a little bit of that. They have several programs there. They have the Renaissance program. They have Kappa. And one of the things about Auburn is that if you are a regular child that goes to Auburn because you live in the zone or the district, in many ways, Auburn is like a foreign country. And so putting myself in his shoes, someone that probably came from Kennedy or West, where statistics and data and research show those schools are not preparing people for the most part for high school. And then within the confusion or within whatever reason, did they even try to get to the reason why the young man was out of class? I have some reasons on why he would be out of class, or not wanting to go to class, or what's happening in the classroom that makes a child want to wander the hall. But anyway, after seeing him that slammed on his head by the police officer, and then seeing a teacher there, and also knowing that this male assistant principal, who put his hands on the boy first, weaponized the police against the young man. The fact that environment exists at Auburn or any school, the fact that a teacher, and we have to put Rockford the schools in context. We have to talk about the history, the culture, and the social situation in which Rockford School District exists, to really understand what happened in that moment. And that's one of the reasons why, I wanted to go live, because this incident, some people have commented, well, it's an isolated incident. And that's the facts that you just shared with us. It's not an isolated incident. And I know you have maybe other facts about the case and other cases that also point to the fact that this is not an isolated incident. This incident is really what I call another Rockford George Floyd moment. As the mother, it was the grandmother. This boy, the doctor, was it the lawyer or the doctor, said that this boy could have been dead. He was milliseconds away from being dead. Some people in the comments even thought that the young man was dead after that slam that the police officer. But let's put this in a little bit of context. When you think about the history of European American or white women weaponizing the police against black males or minority males, Emmett Till, there was just a recent video that surfaced with Terrell Owens. I don't know if you saw it. Terrell Owens was driving through a neighborhood, and a white lady, you saw it? The white lady starts saying, "You're a black male approaching a white woman, but you're a black male," like as if he was supposed to know that he was a threat, he was a danger. Society sees him as a threat. She sees him as a threat. So I'm saying that to say that there's teachers, plenty of teachers. I know, because I was also a substitute teacher in the district. I didn't work for RPS, though. I was a substitute in the district for 3 years. So I've seen attitudes, racist attitudes. I've seen racist interaction, racist dispositions, racist curriculum, racist lesson plans. I've seen these things firsthand. And I've seen frustration build up in the students. And to think that a teacher can weaponize the police against a student. All a teacher has to do is call a police officer into the classroom, and a student could potentially be killed because of this video. The slam that could have resulted in death. And so those are some of the first reactions. Also, just wondering about the other adults that witnessed this, and the fact that this was a potential cover-up that many participated in. And as the May 30th Alliance has said and tried to make vivid many times before, just saying it's your job, it's my job, that goes back to the Nazis in Germany. It's not okay to say that you didn't do anything about this. You are a mandatory reporter as a teacher. As an adult and the schools are working around young people, you are a mandatory reporter. This man abused. Just imagine if a 17-year-old child had a dispute with one of his parents in the home and was refusing to go to his room or whatever, and another adult in the house picked up the boy and body slammed him with full weight to a hard surface. You would have to put a child abuser sign on your front lawn or something like that. And just the fact that these adults didn't do anything. In fact, and that raises another question. There was a security guard in the video. How much is Rockford paying for security services when the security services that are in the building are unable to secure the building? You still need police. You know, are you putting a security service in place that's just good enough that you still need the police? I'm confused about that. And then the young people that witnessed this, you know, what is the trauma level of the young people that have witnessed this? And then, like you said before, which we'll get into more, how is it that no local news source picked up this story, and it had to be picked up in Chicago? And that's one of the reasons why May 30th Alliance is so important, is to shed light and not allow the corrupt, racist Rockford system, the Rockford City. That's why we are at City Hall. Many times before, the city of Rockford has tried to, the city government has tried to act as if the school district is autonomous, that they have no jurisdiction over the school district, that anything that happens in RPS, they're not responsible for it. But the city of Rockford is responsible for the things that happen in its schools.
I think that is important to touch on, because it is something that is true. It is something that it's a contract that they sign. It's a contract every year that allocates $1 million from school funds, from funds designated to be for the school to be used on these resource officers. So I believe what we are calling for now is the removal of all police officers from schools. And I know just saying that sounds like it's a crazy radical idea, but really it's not. It shouldn't be foreign to us to go to a school and not have to fear a police officer, not have to worry about, if I do something in class, is a police officer going to come and put me in cuffs? What's he going to do when I'm in cuffs? What's he going to do when I'm out to get me in cuffs? And that goes to the nature of policing, and that's why we are calling for the removal, not retraining, not some reform. We are calling for the removal of these police officers, the removal of these violent forces and these violent agencies. Something that I don't really talk about a lot because it just doesn't really come up, but I went to a high school that didn't have no police officers, and I went to Boylan, and I never had to worry about if something happened, is a grown-ass man gonna come put their hands on me? Is a grown-ass man gonna come attack me right now? And going to Boylan, you know, kids are kids, teenagers are teenagers. Sometimes some things do flare up, and nothing happened. Everything got resolved peacefully, and people weren't abused. Nobody was tackled. Nobody had a grown man attack them. violently attack them. And this comes from the nature of policing. You cannot reform this. You cannot retrain this. This is what they're designated to do, to treat individuals not as individuals, but as objects to be placed into their custody. That's why we call for the removal of all police officers. And the one of the largest, I guess, counterpoints you would say to that is, well, what happens if there's a school shooter? What happens in something like this? We have seen nationally. What have we seen nationally? In the most horrific cases, what have we seen nationally? We've seen videos be put out that have an editor's note that say the sound of children screaming has been removed, has been edited out. While these police officers in the hallway with these big ass guns getting hand sanitizer and checking their phone for 40 minutes. These police officers, they do not stop. They do not prevent crime. They do not do anything. There is not a resource that is provided to the school. They are taking resources. Maybe that's why they're called resource officers, because they are taking resources away from the school. They are taking $1 million away from the schools. That's the society we live in, Rockford. This is not a just society. This is not how things should function. This is not how. If this was to happen in someplace else in another country, it would be crazy. And people were to see this, how teachers request the services of police, and the services are met like that. That would be considered cruel and unusual punishment. This man all permanently altered a 14-year-old's life. Was free to permanently alter a 14-year-old's life, and for a year, they didn't let anybody know about it. And we're supposed to trust these people? The only solution for the safety of our students, for the safety of our youth, is the removal of these violent agencies. Time and time again, we have seen throughout the years these Rockford police officers use force to subdue, to injure, to cause great bodily harm to students. It wasn't too long ago, really, in the grand scheme of things, we hearing about police officers pepper spraying a whole crowd, whole hallway, because a fight broke out. And that's what happened when you have police officers, when you have people, not even police officers, but that's what happens when you have people in schools who are not invested in the safety of children, who are not invested in the health of children, who are not invested in the progress of children. That police officer, all these police officers, despite their name, despite their whatever else you want to call them, their so-called good qualities, and despite whoever they might be nice to on a day, these police officers are here to use force. They are here to subdue individuals. They are here to violently attack our youth. And it's time that we don't look at this as an isolated incident. We don't look at this as a one-off event or just an unfortunate incident. The further you go back for Rockford Public Schools, the worse Rockford Public Schools look. It's time that we don't. Now, also, I would just like to say that our response to these situations, that this is a standard now. This is what's going to happen in 2022 now. If you a police officer and you're putting your hands on a kid, if you and I mean that in both senses, like this damn cop that got charged with kiddie porn, if you're a police officer who abused somebody, who beating on somebody, who targeting somebody, who shoots somebody, who tased somebody, this is what our response is going to be. Your name going to be everywhere. Your face going to be everywhere. Anything you have ever done to anybody is going to be everywhere. This is our response from now. We're not waiting for Tom McNamara to put out a copy and paste statement. We're not waiting for somebody to put out a statement to calm everybody down and keep everything calm and keep the peace. And we're not waiting for that no more. We have seen these violences play out year after year. We have seen millions and millions and millions of dollars be paid out every year from the Rockford School District. We have seen these large settlements be paid out towards families who sue because of excessive force, and it's time we remove the only thing that has been consistent, and that is the police officers from the life of the youth. We have. Let me stop there. Let me grab something to drink. I'm gonna pass it to you.
I was just about to ask you a question.
Go ahead.
So, what would you say? And I'll answer the question when you go get something to drink. What would you say? Why is this incident of a young man being body slammed by a police officer, and having his skull fractured? Why is that? Why does May 30th Alliance respond to that? How is that related to the three main goals of May 30th Alliance in addressing police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice? What's the connection?
That's a deep question. It's all connected. It's all interconnected. That we have to look at the police terrorism we have seen on a larger scale and a smaller scale. We have, for an example, I'll give you an example. Tom McNamara is doing these public safety meetings all across town. He's talking about the violence that the youth is witness to, the violence that the youth is subjected to. But we're not talking about the police terrorism, the violence that is enacted upon these kids, the police terrorism that they witness to their parents, to their family members, and also the violence that is displayed to these that is not displayed but enacted on these kids, on these young children. And what was also almost as heartbreaking, almost as disturbing as the actual slam was Dan Lauer's response, Dan Lauer's immediate actions following the slam. It wasn't to get Parris Moore some help. It wasn't to call over to some medical aid or anything like that. His first reaction was to dig through Parris Moore's pockets. Why do you think that was? Why do you think that was? Because this is not a man who cares about the safety of Parris Moore. This is a man who's trying to lock him up for anything that he can. That's what he's here for. That's his job in this school. Not to protect anybody, not to protect safety. His job in there was to use force. Then once he used force, his next thought was, okay, how do I imprison this individual? How do I lock this individual up? I'm going to look all through his pockets as he's laying limp on a marble floor with a fractured skull and bruises all over his body. The first thing I'm going to do is dig through his pockets.
And that could have been part of the beginning of the cover-up, because they would have found a vape pen, which research shows that's one of the number one reasons why students in Rockford schools are being expelled, is a vape pen. If they would have found a vape pen, a nickel bag, it would have, in their hearts and minds, it would have all been justified, and maybe even they could have found some legal loophole.
But this is where we are in Rockford. This is where we are, where people are looking for this. What do you think of? We have seen a lack of response from the state. We have seen a lack of response from the city of Rockford. But what would you say? What are your thoughts on the response by community members? Because we have seen an overwhelming amount of support and shares towards this child, but we have also seen a lot of ignorance on display. So, how about the general Rockford?
Well, yeah, that speaks to, part of the reason why it's important and why it's within the range of May 30th Alliance to address this. I have a quote from Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history. He said that lynching begins in the classroom. He said there would be no lynching if it did not start in the classroom. And that's why this incident is so important, and should serve as a wake-up call to Rockford, because people are taught racism in schools. And the school that this young man was the police terrorism that was done to this young man occurred at a school, Rockford Auburn High School, that's on the west end, that's considered to be diverse, culturally diverse, racially diverse, which it may be according to the numbers, but the environment that exists there is ultra racist. I know because I went there. And everything that happened in that video displays that. I want to read the comment of someone that commented on one of the articles about this story. The person said, I guess the name of this officer is correct and has had multiple incidents. Did you go over the other incidents that this officer has had multiple incidents and probably more that we don't know about? I understand. This is the part I really wanted to point to. I understand protect your own. I just want to go into that. This is an adult that's actually on the side of the young man. He says he understands the mentality of the police and the teachers to protect their own. So my question is, who is your own? You're there to protect the students. So you are going into the school. Most of you aren't from Rockford, probably don't live in the district, and you're going to enter the school with a military mentality. Like, we're going there, and that's where the racism comes in. We're going there. These kids are bad. They're violent. We have to protect. And he goes further. And this is a person that's actually on the side of the young man, but that's unconscious that this mentality is how dangerous this mentality and how unfair it is. That you have adults that are going into a high school, and they feel that they have impetus to protect their own. Against who? Against what? That you need the police to protect your back. And that's another thing I want to get to too. The criteria in which teachers and administrators are even hired in Rockford. The fact that you can be hired and work in a school when you feel the need to weaponize the police, and the data shows that Rockford weaponizes the police against students more than just about any other school district in the country. So the question is are Rockford children or youth so much better? They're so much better than other kids across the country. That's what they're saying. That you need to weaponize, call the police. And we've said this May 30th, stop calling the police to deal with incidents regarding black youth. Stop now. I know that, and I know that's hard for, I've heard women say, well, it's easy for you as a man to say because you're dealing with a 200-pound male that's having an incident or whatever. What do you expect us to do? And I will say that the community possibly create an apparatus where, we can start providing the resources so that people don't have to call the police. But let me tell you, you watch that video of that young man being slammed like that. That's what happens when you call the police to try to remedy. They don't know how to remedy, and they're not coming to remedy. They're coming there the same way the men that lynched Emmett Till came there to defend what they saw as the honor of white women against a black male. That's what happened in that video. Even though it was another male that he was, the police jumped in to help his comrade in arms. They're coming into the school district on the west side. Now you getting to the point where you're talking about the violation of this young man's human rights, that he's going to a school in his district, but the teachers, the administrators that work in the school, the security, they are all locked in arms against the students. So the person said, I understand protect your own. I don't understand you as an adult going into a school with young people talking about protect your own. You're there to protect the students. You're there to make sure the students get a quality education. You're not there to protect teachers and other people who have racist opinions and attitudes about the students. They shouldn't be there in the first place. And that's when we get to the point of how are these teachers being placed? But I want to finish this comment. He said, I understand protect your own, but that's to have each other's backs for safety, not what they have made it to be. To have each other's back for safety. Where are you going into a war zone? When the teachers, the administrators, other adults in the community have the attitude and opinion, and I witnessed this as a sub in the district. being in the teachers' lounge, listening to some of the conversations that the teachers had, and I want to place some of the blame, even though we're not going to take the bulk of the blame from the police, the system of policing that exists in this country and in Rockford. But those teachers in general, have to be better and have to do better. I guarantee you, if you were to go, you go and ask the teacher, if you have friends that are teachers, you know people that are teachers, you know people that work in the schools in Rockford, you ask them what do they know about the history of Rockford Public Schools. Ask them about their opinion of the People Who Care lawsuit. Ask them if they know that Rockford is one of the leading school districts in the nation for expulsions. And so if they are not aware of these things, if they don't know anything about the culture, the history, and the social situation of the students that attend, and this is what this shows me, that the teachers, those teachers that witnessed that, those that participated in it, the cover up, because it was a cover up, are either unaware or unconcerned about the history, the culture, and the social situation that the students that are going to these public schools are dealing with. You said
Go ahead.
You said that you dealt with the background of this officer, and that's what I was wondering too. If this officer that was a resource officer in Auburn, okay. The West End, a school in which Kennedy Middle School and West Middle School are feeder schools into Auburn. Schools that have tremendous problems, tremendous failure rate in those schools for years. And that's the last school you need a police officer, especially one that has a background in police terrorism.
I got two things. I got two things. One, this CBS News article said that Auburn High School refers students to police 94% more than any nation in the country, than any school in the country. And also something that you have said, that this is a human rights issue. This is not a political issue. This is not a partisan issue. This is a human rights issue, a human rights violation. It is a human right violation if you go to school as a 14-year-old freshman. If you go to school and you leave in a wheelchair, that is a human rights violation. If you go to school and a member of the state picks you up and slams your head on the ground, on the marble floor, that is a human rights violation. And it is the cover-up. It is a cover-up to tell the grandmother that there was a little struggle and he slipped and fell. Where in that video do you see his slip? I don't see him lose his... The only time he loses his footing, or might not have his footing under him, is when that police officer picked him up, double underhooked, and picked him up over his head and slammed him to the ground. That's not a slip and fall. That's not an accident. That is a blatant lie. If not a lie, then is a lie of omission. It is a lie of omission to keep the video from the family. It is a lie of omission to keep this video out of the public. It's a lie of omission to have this happen a year ago, to have the mayor run around all this city, talk about the violence the youth has faced all around the city. The youth. And we're hearing from the I can't think of her name. Oh my goodness, that's gonna bother me. I can't think of her name, but this woman, this other white woman who spoke at this public safety meeting, and this other woman, she had said in this article that she's talking about the teens, that the issues they face are a lot more difficult now. And these teens, they're just a lot tougher now. Really? I don't think that's true. I don't think human beings have. I also think that's like some Mike Dalkey shit. Like, yeah, they all got superhuman strength, and we just got to use this force. That's really what I think about that shit. But really, this is a human rights issue. We can't pick and choose. We as a community members, we are not we should not pick and choose who to fight for. We should not pick and choose which student to fight for. We should not say that, oh, this one, I knew him, or oh, this one, well, he should have just went to school. No, we have to be against all incidences of police terrorism. Otherwise, it continues. Otherwise, it sucks up, it scoops up everybody into this vacuum. And who knows who's gonna be next? Who knows? Maybe I'll ask, because I'm not a parent, but as a parent, what your reaction would that be? Just as a parent.
Yeah, I've seen some comments where people said, if that had been my child, this and it is your child, basically. That's how I felt. I looked at the young man as I would almost look at my child. Of course, just be the way human nature, the way we've been conditioned in society to be selfish subconsciously, whether we know it or not. Because, of course, if that had been my child, I would have been, But at the same time, I would like to look at it as this is my child. And that's why we're here doing the live now, because we're just as concerned with this, and we're concerned about it on a macro level. As you said, the mayor has been using the blame the victim, and has admitted it in some ways, is using the blame the victim, of course, of inaction or action, or ways to have an agenda that does not address racism at all. You're going to do something about crime in Rockford without addressing racism directly is impossible, because as this case shows, this case of this young man being body slammed, Rockford has been said to be a dropout factory. And we have the data that Rockford is a dropout factory. What happens when these people drop out? And where are they going to go? Who are they going to work for? I know there's a few factories that look forward to them dropping out, and so when almost the economy around here is built around dropout factories. And then the concept we've brought up before, and people should research this if you're not familiar with the concept of school to prison pipeline. Rockford has that down to a science. What do you think is going to happen on the streets of Rockford when when your schools are dropout factories and they're school to prison pipelines? That's what your schools are, and that's why I said the adults at the school are going in there like they're going into combat zones, and are going in there to protect each other's backs. They're not going in there to protect the students. They're not going in there to protect the interests of the parents, even though they have these positions called parent-teacher liaison. Where's the parent-teacher liaison at Auburn? And that's another thing. Tag anybody that you know that's a teacher that has expressed even some semblance of wanting social justice reform, of being so-called woke, or have come down to the occupation, or that participated in. I know a number of Auburn teachers participated in some of the original marches after May 30th around Rockford. They had teachers from Auburn T-shirts on at the march. It is incumbent upon you to do something about this. It's no longer okay, it's never been okay, to put your job ahead of what's right and what's just. The people that I saw, the adults that I saw in that video, put their jobs and their well-being, either that or it was fear, confusion, because some of them probably don't understood what they saw. Even people that are watching the video, that's one of the goals of trying to put this in context. To help you see a little further, that is what happened in that video is even deeper than what you see with your plain eyes. That there is an environment that exists that makes that happen, and that will make it happen again. And this happened. We've had young people come down here and tell us directly that they've been abused by police officers. And it's not just the police officers. Just a few years ago, PE teacher, strength and conditioning coach, body slammed a boy. and got away with it. A few years before that, a teacher body slammed a kid on video at Guilford and got away with it. So it's precedent. This is not just one issue. And like we said, if you're concerned about intercommunity violence, so-called black on black violence, you have to, and May 30th has continued to try to point people to go to the root of the issue, to get to the root of the issue. The root of the issue, the city, have you seen anything publicly, a press conference, a news release in which the mayor or the city government has said that they have a plan or an agenda to address racial injustice in the city? And we know that Rockford has a track record. Rockford's school district has been fighting racial discrimination lawsuits since 1969. Since 1969, Rockford schools have been said to have had racism down to a science.
Wow. You know what? Go ahead. You got a point? Go ahead.
I would like to share a few sources. Like I said, get this information out. Go to the May 30th Alliance page. All the articles, videos about this incident, share them. Because another thing Rockford has done and has gotten down to almost a science, and that is keeping important stories like this local. And they've used people to help them do this in a way. And I'm calling on people, don't allow them to continue to push stories like this and incidents like this under the rug. Share it, tag people, tag your alder person or school board people that were coming around the occupation, emphasizing electoral politics. Where are they now? Especially those that were telling us to get involved with the school district, get involved with the school board, come down to the school board meetings. Tag them and make sure that they see these videos, and so we see a response from these people about this. This is serious. This is a George Floyd moment. And there's been many incidents. That 17-year-old that was just shot in the back after being tased. The bowling alley shooting, which was primarily could be considered a racial attack, which the city worked, very hard to push these things under the rug to make sure that they don't get a lot of traction outside of Rockford. So we have to counter that, especially if you have friends or colleagues, comrades outside of Rockford. Tag them, share it, make sure that this video gets out. Ask the city officials, the news outlets in Rockford, why didn't you cover this story? It's not too late to investigate and get into it more and to see. And like I asked you, what school is this young man at now? Was this affected him in a way where he's no longer even in Rockford Public Schools? He's in probably in some type of alternative school now.
To that I do not know. To that I do not have an answer. But another point that I would like to discuss about the community response is some people are saying we have been calling for the removal of all police officers, and some people have been saying, well, let's just take this one's badge, and then we still need these police officers for our safety. That's not true. That is one of the most frustrating things that I can see, really. And also I would like to address that comment. That is a disgusting comment. I guess not a disgusting comment, but it's a disgusting action that two other people can be confronted with this issue and choose silence and choose not to talk about it and choose not to fight for it, and see a 14-year-old freshman be slammed, have his life be permanently altered by one of their employees, by a City of Rockford government employee, and say that's not their fight. We have to get rid of that mindset in Rockford. We have to get rid of the mindset that, well, their justice doesn't have to do nothing with me. We have to get rid of that mindset. We have to get rid of that individualistic mindset and in turn start a new community-based initiative, a community-based thought and community-based action. We see this. You're talking about does Tom have a plan to address the racism in this city? all of Tom's programs to address the violence the youth face, all of them involve the police. All of them, directly or indirectly, involve police officers. That is one of the most dangerous things you can do to this city, is to tunnel kids, not even to shovel, but to tunnel kids into the police. To act as if that's our only resource. That's all we can do. We can just give you up to the police, and whatever they'll do to you, we won't even speak about it. We won't even say a word. No public comment, no backlash. We just gonna be quiet.
And to speak to that, just a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's like the mayor releases a community. They have like a community newsletter that comes out, and and within the newsletter said the mayor reaches out to local business leaders to decrease property taxes. And within that article, he said that both the city and RPS 205 have made a concerted effort to reduce our portions of the property tax bill for Rockford residents. Now, those of you who are not familiar with the People Who Care lawsuit, I would urge you to go and study it. It's hard to understand anything that's happening not only in Rockford Public Schools, but in the streets. Because like we said, lynching begins in the classroom. Even investors in prisons start looking at test scores from 4th grade to determine on their investments in prisons. And if we look at the data, especially for minority students in Rockford going to 4th grade, we know what the data says. And we know, too, that the residents of Rockford, being led by leaders in Rockford, have used to blame the victim. They've consistently blamed the victim. Even when the city of Rockford was on trial in criminal court for its mistreatment of minority students in Rockford from, I think it was 2 years. It was it was in the 90s when they went to trial for the People Who Care, which they lost. But the opposing side, the city of Rockford, the school district, they basically said that no amount of money, no amount of reforms to the school district would be of any use because the culture and the home environment of the students is so terrible. They don't value education. It's not our fault, even though the judge and the data showed it's not our fault. And isn't that what the mayor said? Didn't he say that domestic violence, you have to understand the code words and the consistency in this. So you overturn the lawsuit. The city was successful in overturning the lawsuits and the things that were put in place after People Who Care to remedy the racist system in which Rockford Public Schools operates in. One of the ways that the city appealed to the population was through money. They came at them, and that gets to the point where him now appealing to business. And all you so-called black business owners, be careful, because they're going to call you into meetings and give you a agenda that they already cooked up, in which you are going to be helping them lower property taxes and lower business taxes at the expense of the education of minority students. The increase in property taxes in the 90s was based on the People Who Care lawsuit, was based on racism in the public schools. So when the mayor says that they are lower in property taxes, but there's no detail, like we said, there's no agenda to deal with racism. Are the schools, I might have missed it. Did you see any data or research that says the schools in Rockford are no longer racist? Oh, no, I haven't.
I don't think that one exists.
That's what it seemed like. It seemed like
a school without police is not a radical thing. It is the humane thing. It is the student-based action decision to make. It is the community-based action to make. Because really, they could fire Dan Lauer. They could set him up to be a scapegoat, and he gonna have to bite the bullet. He gonna have to bite the bullet for for the fractured skull of Parris Moore, they're gonna make him bite the bullet. For Trey Bowman, they're gonna make him bite the bullet. For the 2 individuals who died in the jail this year, the 2 other individuals who were shot by the police this year, they're gonna make him bite the bullet for all of them. Look, we held the police officer accountable, but that's not. Dan Lauer is nothing more, or not Dan, but Brad Lauer is nothing more than a thoughtless, faceless brute. The most replaceable person in this story is Brad Lauer. If you fire Brad Lauer was to come down here right now and throw his gun and badge on the table and say, "I'm done. I'm not a police officer no more." That position, that resource officer position, will be filled like that, and it will be another thoughtless, faceless brute, free to enact any type of violence he wants to upon children. That is why it is important, and that is why the only solution, the only true solution for community health, for student health, for just the only true action to make is the removal of all police officers from Rockford Public Schools. That will save us. That won't even save us. That will allow an extra $1 million to be allocated to students, to truly be allocated to student life, to truly be allocated to student safety.
And to your point, why is even Rockford is uniquely positioned to not have police in the schools because of its history, because of the culture of the school district. And to put this in context with the young male of mixed heritage, African American, European heritage, the young 14-year-old that was had his skull fractured by a police officer at Auburn High School on the west side. Just giving it some context, is that the environment and the school environment in Rockford is such that when the police are weaponized against the students, you have the same type of context that you could put Emmett Till in, the same type of context that you can put even a lot of people may not know this, but in the case of Mark Balmore, the police that were called on the scene, they were called because Mark Balmore was said to have did something to a white woman. Even the case of Demetrius Bennett, they thought that his wife was white. And so they're just putting that young black males in the situation at Auburn or any other school, and other minority males or women, males primarily, putting them in a situation where police officers who are not educated, and I don't mean having a degree when I say that. The definition of education I refer to is education meaning to know what to do and what not to do. This officer obviously did not know what to do in that situation. That's obvious. Even the people that support him are saying, well, maybe somebody said that his action should be reviewed. They didn't say that his action should be reviewed. But this is you have a hotbed. And the young man, the 14-year-old now, if he was to go out or eventually become a person that because the educational process didn't work for him, to become involved in criminal activity, we know he must be angry, and he should be angry and distrustful of most adults, because he saw adults lie, he saw adults cover up, he saw adults not come to his aid. And so you have, and maybe many youth, the number of black and Hispanic youth that has experienced maybe not something as drastic as that, but have experienced that to some degree. They had cases at Kennedy Middle School a year ago where several students reported that the white female cop called them monkeys. And so that's what I'm saying. If you, I've even had a situation where I've been in situations working as a substitute teacher in Rockford, and I was co-teaching with another teacher, And the teachers tried to use me as a security guard against the students. But because I was conscious enough to know, like, no, I watch you psychologically abuse these students for 2 days. And when they react, then you get to call the police out the hallway. You know, you got a security. What is a security guard there for? Why do you have security guards in Auburn in these schools? You have coaches, football coaches. They use other black males as security for the scared white teachers as well. I've witnessed this. They try to use me as such. That's what, if you don't know that, that's what they're using you for. Some of you that's in the school building, they got you as hall monitors. They make up special positions for you. You are part of the apparatus that's psychologically oppressing and these students, helping them create the prison to school to prison pipeline, helping them to create dropout factories, helping them to create mad, angry, uneducated youth that are going to flood the streets of Rockford. Then you're going to turn around and say, what about black on black crime, or what about youth violence? This violence is starting in the schools. Tom McNamara said it starts in the home. That goes back, you do the history, you go back and read the transcript from the People Who Care lawsuit. That's what the school district was using as a defense. That it's not what we're doing in the schools, even though they have scientific data. They don't value education. They don't read at night. They don't, what can we do? And why are you still in these positions? Why are you still collecting checks? Black teachers in particular. Black people that are working as bus drivers, paras, parent teacher liaisons. What are you doing in the building to combat this? Many of you may not know you got your position if not directly from affirmative action, something similar. And you're not there in the building to help cover up police terrorism. You're there in the building to be an advocate for the community in which you come from. That's what the money is being allocated for. That's why you are there. That's why people fought to get more black teachers. That's why people fought to get more black administrators. Not for you to just collect a check. Not for you to just go along to get along. Not for you to be bodyguards for teachers that's coming from Roscoe and coming from, I looked up the school board. Look up the school board, the Rockford School Board, and see who you see. The first couple persons that I read, they're not even from Rockford. They're from little small towns, and that's not to say that people from outside of Rockford can't come and be productive. But keep in mind, it's two kinds of so-called outsiders. There's a good outsider, there's a bad outsider. The good outsider is the person that can come into Rockford that has the experience, the knowledge. Rockford, if they wanted to solve many of the vexing issues in the school district, there are qualified professionals in the field of education across the country that you can recruit to bring into these schools to solve these problems immediately. But the city of Rockford profits off of dropout factories. When you go and you study the history of the makeup of the Rockford School Board, and it's not enough to say, well, we're going to vote to get somebody in, because the way that they have it structured, the way that Rockford, the breakdown of the racial demographic and residential demographics in Rockford, minority people at best, the way that the current system is set up in Rockford, at best, unless racism disappears tonight, at best you can get 2 seats on the school board, at best. In fact, most of the schools that are majority minority are in one sub-district. That's one person. All right, and we've had 2 resignations in that position. Well, 1 resignation in that position already, and a whole lot of corruption around even just those couple of positions that minorities can occupy on the school board. They have made sure. Because let me say, if and not to be calling people's name, but if Miss Lisa Jackson was still on the school board, this case that happened at Auburn wouldn't have been able to be swept under the rug so easily. So that's why the Rockford School Board and so-called leaders in the community make sure that they control even the 1 seat. I personally have been called to meetings by white people, European Americans, where they asked me if I would run for that school district position. They volunteered to finance my candidacy. And I asked them, how do you feel comfortable coming to me as a person that lives outside of the sub-district that you're trying to influence and making a decision for the black community on who should be in that seat? And I'm not the only one in which people from outside of our community have put these candidates up there, put them in place. We had the case with, go look up the situation that happened between Anthony Dixon and Dr. Brandy Brown. Go look at the corruption that happened when Dr. Brandy Brown, who if she had been on the school board when that incident happened, it would have been a whole different story. And that's the lengths that they go to make sure information is not out. And that's why we're here. One of the problems that we have is that this community is highly uninformed. Intentionally highly uninformed. Go look at the comments underneath some of these stories, some of the things that people are saying. They have no information. They know nothing. Ask these teachers. If you are a parent, you go to parent-teacher conferences. Those parent-teacher conferences are for you to investigate what's happening in your child's education. Don't let them bully you or run. You go there and ask them, what do you know about the psychological development of black children? What do you know about the psychological development of Hispanic children? How many Hispanic authors have you read concerning the education of Hispanic students? How many authors, African-American authors, have you read? Have you read Kwanzaa Kinjufu? Have you read the psychological development of black children? Have you read the miseducation of... And if these people, if nay is the answer, they shouldn't be in the schools because they have no historical context. They have no cultural understanding of students. So weaponizing the police is first nature. Weaponizing the police. Some of these teachers, I knew several teachers that I had to, and I say had because that's one of the reasons why I refused to work in the Rockford Public Schools again, is because the environment is so racist. I've witnessed this. I know for a fact the environment is so racist. I've worked side by side with teachers who were married to police officers. During Trayvon Martin, they were in the classroom at Kennedy teaching pro-police literature at Kennedy. And so when these students rise up and are upset, the teacher, these teachers do not want to have to educate them. We know this because of so-called, what is the law where you can't teach critical race theory? Critical race theory is basically the true history that helps you understand why we are where we are as a society. It will help you understand why African American students, Hispanic students may score lower than white students. Many of these teachers too, white adults went way out of their way to make sure that this wouldn't happen. They want to be able to go into the classroom, not have to know anything about the community, continue to hold negative attitudes about the community and the students, and then when stuff goes wrong, they can call the police right out the hallway to come get you. Just imagine that. I know because I debated with teachers on a regular basis in school. They would have been calling the police in on me, and I was a violent person. This would have been strictly for verbal altercations. When they said, how many times did they say, and just they called the police on students in Rockford? Was it that Auburn? 78 times?
73 times, like over 40 of them resulted in an arrest.
And so that tag shared this information with the people that have graduated from Auburn that are being used to sell Auburn. And I'm not saying it's the fault of the people. You have Michelle Williams from Destiny Child, Fred Van Vliet, his name and his image is all over. I guarantee you that they are unaware of these instances that are happening in Auburn right now. And this is not an isolated incident. Auburn, I've always told people, Auburn is like apartheid South Africa. You have a so-called gifted Renaissance program that's predominantly white in a school zone that would be predominantly black, and not to mention that if you were to take in Dr. Sheffield, the former superintendent, she tried to remove the Renaissance program out of Auburn and put it on the east side. What that would have did was open up Auburn for the resources that would come to a severely underperforming school. The resources and the attention, and I've subbed at Auburn before. I've seen the attention to different. They at one point they said even the gifted kids had air conditioning and the other kids didn't. You know, these type of games, and so that's a social experiment happening. You're teaching the white kids to have negative attitudes about the black students. They don't know why the black students are underperforming and they're performing above level of some of the top test scores in the state. And so that environment, and that's why I'm trying to draw the picture of the environment. When I saw the young man body slam, I think about the entire context of the situation, that these teachers are allowed to go in there. How many teachers would you say, how many teachers in Rockford Public Schools do you think are either married to a police officer, is related to a police officer, or is what you would call pro-police and has taken that attitude and
they were related to a police. If not here, they had a cousin out in some small ass country, or had a cousin out in Chicago. He a police officer, and that really was eye opening to me. Is how many is 300 of these police officers
in Rockford schools.
Mm-hmm. It's 300 police officers. Yeah, 300 police officers.
But then they Roscoe, a lot of them.
Yeah. What we see in the video, the actions that staff administration took, the actions that police officers took, would be their actions for the next year. The security guard who, after she witnessed a slam, turned around and guided the students in another direction, shielded the students from seeing what was going on. That has been the reaction from the administration at Auburn. That has been the reaction. Now we have to get to a point where who knew? Who all knew? This happened a year ago. First 2 weeks of school a year ago. Who all knew? First 2 weeks of school a year ago. Who all knew?
You body slam a young man the second week of school for being in the hallway, a freshman? Just think about that, a freshman.
Let me just give you
environment like Auburn.
An experience. Just now that we talking about this, I had an experience at Boylan. It wasn't my first 2 weeks, but my first week at school, and I don't know why he wanted to be outside this classroom. Could be he had an issue with what was being taught. It could be any reason why he wanted to be out of the classroom. But an experience I had at Boylan, a school with no police officers, one or sometimes two security guards who, for the most part, are just on their phones watching shows on Netflix the entire day. My freshman year, Boylan foreign to me. I never really walked my schedule. I did anything like that, and I had trouble finding my English class for some reason. I just couldn't find it. I was wandering the halls trying to find it. I was on my phone trying to find it, and guess what? It was no police officers there to body slam me.
Or a principal that comes in. What makes you? Maybe it's some back. Did he have interaction with the principal? What makes him come and move in front of him and grabs him as if like is a checkpoint in South Africa?
That is maybe not because of the amount of force that is used directly afterwards, but why is a principal just grabbing at a student he don't know? Why is he just
didn't know the police was gonna come to his aid right away too?
Why is that okay?
Why is that move?
Why do you think that is okay? Why do you think that's a just society that a grown ass man can just can just grab that and be putting their hands on a child, a 14-year-old child, a 11-year-old child. You need to put your hands on like this,
knowing that you got the police coming to your aid. That is a coward move. And I wanted to just also talk about the reason, like I was saying, the uniqueness and the reason why Rockford, out of any school district, should not have police in the schools, and also needs to work very hard to weed out the racist, inept teachers, administrators, people that are coming into the schools, know nothing about the history of Rockford Public Schools. Because according to an article, research, you can Google WNIJ, NPR, radio, and Rockford Public Schools. All the articles that come up will shock you, unless you know this already, on ways in which Rockford's public school district ranks in terms of racial disparities, in terms of educational achievement. And remember, that's why I brought this book, to show you this book. Or is it in the camera? Blaming the victim. Blaming the victim. Because this is what they will say is the reason for the low achievement. It's the children. It's the community. It's domestic violence. Domestic violence is the reason why Rockford. You mean to tell me you saying that the kids in Rockford, the youth in Rockford, are worse, badder, whatever you want to use those expressions, badder than kids in Chicago? That's what the data says. That kids in Rockford are worse than kids in South Central. The kids in Rockford are worse than the kids in Compton. The kids in Rockford are worse than the kids in Peoria, Dansville. They're worse than the kids, because that's, if you take this data and information, because some people will say, well, it must be something that the students or their parents or the environments they come from would make Rockford. It's not anything about the system in Rockford. And before, I know people saying, well, yeah, we know, everybody know Rockford racist, but what's the solutions? And we get to that and there's already a call to action. But one is to educate the population as best as possible, because without a population, enough people in the community that have information, has
access to that information. Yeah, that's the thing that I feel like, really, in analyzing the response, from community members of Rockford, it really just goes to show the purposeful, intentional miseducation of the Rockford public to teach individuals to just blindly trust the badge, just blindly trust whatever the mayor say, just blindly trust. Don't even think. We don't even need you to think. That's what they're creating at these schools. They're not creating, they're not building an environment for students to learn in a healthy way, and to learn about their history, to learn about the history of their city. And they're creating an environment for people to be thoughtless, mindless individuals that blindly follow institutions.
That help the business. The school board historically has been controlled by business in Rockford, and that's why May 30th Alliance, with the City Hall protest, we've come face to face with those who want to put property before people, want to put business success before justice. Because those two things it has to come to a head. And like I said, the mayor already has said they're working with business owners to lower the property taxes. And because they know a lot of people care more about their property taxes than justice for kids and schools, especially when they think that the reason why the kids are underperforming is because their mother didn't read to them when they were a baby, or somebody slapping their mother around in the house. And I'm not belittling domestic violence, but I know that there's a cause. These people that are committing domestic violence, what schools did they go to? Where were they educated? Where Rockford schools are consistently in the top 5 in Illinois for in-school suspensions. Out of school suspensions, and I think Auburn, just to put the situation in context, this young man is not an anomaly. Many people don't want to be in the classes at Auburn. How do we know? They're number 2 in school suspension. East, I think, is number 1 in out of school suspension. And so you have to ask yourself, why? If you know that you can't do this, you can't do this. You know that you know about this. You know that the problem is deeper than just saying that it's as the mayor has said, it's domestic violence. And after the shooting at Auburn, and this is part of the solution we're talking about, educating the people, telling the truth to the people. Remember the press conference. Go back and watch the press conference after the shooting at Auburn, outside of Auburn. One of the things that was said was that we don't have time to solve or deal with the root causes because we have an immediate threat right now, and that's these bad youth. So you don't have time. And that was said throughout the 60s and 70s after tons of research came out proving that racial discrimination, police terrorism was causing many of the what we call derivative crimes. The so-called youth violence, black on black, those are derivative crimes. Those are derivative crimes that come forth from things that are done by adults. So it says, Rockford schools are consistently in the top 5 in Illinois for in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, and expulsions. If you're going to solve the violence program in Rockford, you should be working diligently to solve. What is the mayor or the school district? What is their plan to stop Rockford from being one of the top schools in expulsions? In 2 of the last 3 school years, a Rockford school led the state in expulsions. One of those was Kennedy Middle School. Now, that's why it's important to know history. If you go back to the People Who Care lawsuit, one of the main issues was that the community. Now, and people will come to you, well, come down to the school board, come to this public meeting. The people of the community of Rockford unified around the fact that they knew they didn't want West High School closed. West High School was the only high school in Rockford that was naturally integrated. This and as you know, West was closed anyway, even though the community vehemently tried to resist it. But it says a Rockford school led the state, I brought that up to say Kennedy wouldn't be the way it is now if West High School had remained open. Kennedy wouldn't be the prison to school to prison pipeline that it is now. Well, that was one of the issues. There's other issues. But I found that interesting. Rockford schools led the state in expulsions. One of those schools was Kennedy. And so that's the environment. And these are the children that are being fed into Auburn. If you have a middle school that led the school in expulsions, what happens if and many of those, from what I understand, I don't know if they still do this, but they had a program that they created where they tracked these students straight from Kennedy into Roosevelt, where they never even stepped a foot in a public Rockford in a regular zone high school, because either their test scores or their was too low, or they had behavior problems. And when they route them into Roosevelt, they don't have to. There is not reported as an expulsion. So even this article broke down how Rockford has created a way to expel even more students than is being recorded on the record. And that goes back to the whole statement that people may have heard before. Rockford School District has racism down to a science. That's why when we see a police officer in view, you think that he did this in front of at least, from what I saw, it was 8 people in the hallway, 8 to 9 to 10. He had to know that there were no real consequences.
The reaction by the people in the video, almost seemed like they know it's gonna be no consequences. Almost seemed like this normal for them. Really, it seemed like to witness this, to witness a child be knocked unconscious and just walk away down the hall like it's a normal part of your day.
They didn't even know if he was alive still.
Really?
People that saw the video, some of the people in the comments, they expressed they thought the young man was dead. And you had children that they came and ushered them back. No explanation on what happened. And we've seen this kind of misguided so-called protection of the, what would you call it, the sensibilities of the children when we're protesting City Market, and profane language is being used to express the profane environment and situation that is Rockford. When profane, the only language that can truly express what's happening. Do you think that people that experience things like this young man or have seen it, that they are upset when they hear profane language? We know that many of them join in. Many of them want to lead the call because they know that it's true. But the adults, many of the adults, we had adults come and walk past as we're protesting and try to raise awareness on these issues, and people are expressing themselves in a way that they should be expressed. There should have been thousands of cuss words fled in the comment section when they saw this video. We should have heard people yelling, fuck the police, this, whatever they wanted to yell through windows and rooftops throughout Rockford. When you see this, you have no problem with somebody saying, oh, fuck that referee, when you watching if the Bears is losing. If the Bears is losing, fuck that coach. But you value human life so to such a lesser degree, and I brought that up to say that that's an excuse that people have used to try to dilute the message coming from May 30th Alliance, and to prevent young people or prevent people from participating or things like that. And like I said, they covered they covered the children's eyes so they can't see the posters or the postcards. We seen people cover the ears so they couldn't see, and that was similar what I thought about when I saw the video. So you're not going to teach. You had youth that just witnessed this young man be and body slammed is not even a fair assessment.
Knocked unconscious.
What I don't know if that's a wrestling move, but that he used, but it's beyond a body slam what he did, because he purposely picked him up his head and drove it, and the boy was unconscious. Did the young people that witnessed that, did they get any type of counseling, psychological awareness? And that's why we are vehement, telling people, stop taking pictures with police. Stop inviting police to your youth events. There was a flyer about a Black Panther writing class that's supposed to happen in Fairgrounds, the same place where Denzel Duvant was beat mercilessly while handcuffed by the police. That they're having a Black Panther writing based on the movie. And the police are a sponsor. The police shield is on the flyer. We have to, if you're not going to do anything else, stop. even if it's for a moment. Maybe you like, no, I can't never say I'm a permanently not work with police. You stop until you can at least do some investigation and for a moment. That's solidarity. You want to have solidarity with the May 30th Alliance and other groups that are trying to bring justice to Rockford. You stop helping the police department market itself. Stop helping them to say that the only thing, the problem is that there's just misunderstanding between the black community and the police. It's not a misunderstanding. We understand fully well that they're coming to occupy a foreign territory. When they go into Kennedy and West and Auburn, I've heard the teachers talk in the teachers' lounge. I've had to correct many of them for talking disrespectful about the parents, about the community, and the society hundreds of times. So I know the attitudes, and I know the reason, the just reasons why these young people are disillusioned about the educational process in Rockford. Is another NPR article, you can Google it, where they say Rockford has one of the highest rates of minority students that never return to the schools after COVID. And so we cannot look at this video in isolation. We cannot look at this video and isolate it from the youth crime that we see. Because the youth, they have no reason to trust the adults, especially the adult leadership. The principal, the assistant principal that grabbed the boy that initiated this and unnecessarily. And let me say this. I've been working with youth. I've worked with youth for about 15 years. I've never needed the assistance of police. I've never called the police on young person. And I worked in a team program, where the most troubled youth were in the program. I worked at Fresh Start. I've worked at Roosevelt. I've worked at Regional. I've worked at, and I've never even come close to trying to weaponize the police against these students. Many times, if I had a situation that escalated with a student, I was conscious that I sort of was part of the reason. And many of these teachers know it too. I've witnessed it. I've witnessed teachers with no lessons plan spend the whole class period writing referrals because they didn't have a lesson plan. And so these things have to be addressed. I want to see the teachers walk out the school. Or walk out. And that's another thing. When we talk about solutions, it can't be the same old. It has to be something that is serious, that's sacrificial, that could possibly cost you your job, your livelihood, and other things. Because, like I said, tried to express earlier, the city leadership, and I'm not just talking about this administration, because this is not about electoral politics. Throughout, since we know for sure, at least since 1969, the city leadership has tried to use money, check a bag. Many people, that's all they want. They think that's the woke thing to teach young people, is to be concerned about checking the bag more than justice itself. They're going to use your property taxes. So if you are a homeowner, if you are a business owner in Rockford, they're going to try to convince you that they can't afford to fix these racist schools because it'll raise your property taxes. Another thing, go back at the same time as people who care, the Freeport community rose up and filed suit against their school district. But the difference was Freeport's school district immediately solved the case out of court and took the recommendations of the community immediately. It cost the taxpayers no money. Rockford did the very opposite. They fought for years. They even fought, at one point, the plaintiffs of people who care, they had to pay the court costs out of their pocket. So the school district strategy was to bleed them out, to drag the case through, and that until money became an issue. So some kind of way, I forget the details, but you can Google find it. They made it where the school district had to cover the court costs. So and that flipped the whole thing. And I'm saying all this to say, don't let them appeal to your vain, your vanity, your property taxes, your business taxes. are not more important than getting justice for this young man that was skull. And that's not, it's plenty of incidents. Some of them may not be as extreme as that. The psychological brain crushing blows that these young people get in the school system, the curriculum that's being taught, we know it nationally. Not all European Americans or white people are against teaching the truth of American history in the schools, but a large majority of them rose up and said they do not want the truth taught in the schools. These young people are dying, are thirsting. Wait until February come around, and if any of you have young people on social media following young, they are on there talking about how no black history is being taught in the schools in Rockford. These are the kids are talking about it, complaining. You look at Auburn, which is located on the west side of Rockford. Go and look at the extracurricular activities, the plays that are being done, the school band. All of these things are white. All of it is white. All of it is racist. You on the west side of Rockford, and I go in there. I say, let me look. I look on the website, the Kappa. They have a listing of the plays: Mary Poppins, Dr. Seuss. That is cultural oppression. I'll walk out the class if I wasn't afraid of what had happened to me when I got home, the punishment that coming from. I would have walked out the class. And in many instances, I didn't walk in the class. We're in the back playing football with the thing that you slide or whatever, because we knew that what was being taught was trash and garbage. Now, that this is not in any way to try to tell young people not to take education seriously, but we as adults in the community must remedy this situation. Even if this boy hadn't been had his head crushed to the ground like that, the psychological blows that's being dealt to these young people on a daily basis in Rockford Public Schools will lead to more incidents like this. We've had students from Kennedy tell us they've witnessed police abuse in the hallways. And I'm pretty sure at Kennedy, if we were to do a survey, and maybe that's another thing we can do, we could start people that have incidents like this. The parent of the young man that was body slammed by a Auburn PE coach. He was the strength and conditioning coach. I won't call his name. I know his name. But I talked to his mother directly. She talked about the trauma. She talked about the situation. Nothing happened to this PE coach. So there's precedent to this, as we said before.
What is really more important than creating a safe and healthy environment for students to prosper in and to learning? We as a society, we as a culture, we as a community, we cannot allow these dehumanization tactics, dehumanization policies to just take over our lives. This was a human being, a 14-year-old child, permanently his life altered, permanent brain damage, permanently. You know, I was watching this movie once, and it was about torture, about how the U.S. was trying to define ways to legally torture. And at first it was, if it causes permanent damage to the subject, then it can be considered torture. It can be considered torture in that light. This is torturous, cruel, and unusual conditions that our students are forced to go through. Because if you don't go to school, what's going to happen? They're going to show up. So we can't allow this to be treated like out of sight, out of mind. We can't allow this to be treated like, well, I don't know him. I never seen him. We can't allow. This is a human being. A human being went to school and left in a wheelchair. And his grandmother, let's talk about that.
His
grandmother had to take him to the hospital. His grandmother had to take him to the hospital, and that's where they found out he had a fractured skull. And that's when she started thinking about maybe he didn't just slip and fall like he told me. Maybe it wasn't just that.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone from the school recommended that she take him to the hospital. The cop, he had to know that this boy needed to go to the hospital. But they were willing to, oh, yeah, okay, he was bad. We're not going to suspend him, though. He can't come to the football games on Friday for a while or something. But just take him home and put some on his ankle. They just ushered him out the building.
I don't know if I mentioned this earlier in the facts of the case, but charges were filed. Charges were filed on the 14-year-old child 2 months after the fact. 2 months after the fact, after they released the video, is when charges are filed. After they hire an attorney is when charges are filed. So we are seeing from staff administration, we are seeing from our local government, we have been seeing this for decades. For decades, we have been seeing this. For over half a century, we have been seeing this play out. The dehumanization of Rockford youth. You got any final thoughts, final things you would like to say?
I guess one of the final things is just adding more context, more history to Rockford Public Schools. And that is concerning the lawsuit, the people who care. Karina Curry from the Rockford Register broke an article some years ago that stated that Rockford schools had basically resegregated, which was in violation of the Armstrong Act. The Armstrong Act. This law requires each Illinois school district to take positive steps toward eliminating racial separation within its schools, no matter what the cause. So Karina Curry, in this article, she found that Rockford schools are basically resegregated the way they were in 1969. So there was a whole bunch of scrambling to try to push this under the rug and try to make it seem like it was that the Rockford schools were not in violation of national law, state law. Groups, that's where a group sprung up. Eliminate racism, that's how they sprung up. And many of these groups, they became voids. They filled a void that really stopped the people from filing another lawsuit. Okay, and I say that another lawsuit is coming to Rockford Public Schools. Another discrimination lawsuit. You concerned about your property taxes, you concerned about your business taxes, you need to get in and do something. Figure out what you can do, because the way things currently are, not only a discrimination lawsuit similar to People Who Care, which turned this city upside down, economically and otherwise, is coming.
It is important when we try to build the community that we want to live in, the society that we want to live in, that we call out and address the human rights violations in our current world, in our current society. It is important that we look at each incident as a human being and not just some dehumanized, humanoid. It is important that we analyze and have critical thought, critical self-thought. We critically analyze the police in this city, critically analyze the school district in this city. We critically analyze every aspect of Rockford. Because this is not normal. This is not how things should be. This is not where we should be at in Rockford in 2022. This is not a just society. And I know I've been saying that a lot, and really that's been kind of my new understanding, is that you can't come up and talk to me unless we're both on the understandings that we do not live in a just society. So stop trying to fit in to this unjust society and figure out what you're going to do to protect the most vulnerable of us. What are you going to do to protect these students from the harm, the violences they are forced to endure, by the mental and physical violences they are forced to endure at these police state schools? We have to do better as a community, and we have to do community-based, community-led actions, not copy and paste state responses, because all we're going to get lies. We're going to get, it was just a little slip and fall. We're going to get a man digging through the pockets of a 14-year-old unconscious boy on the ground with his head fractured.
That's in front of other adults.
No fear of repercussions. The reason why he felt free to do that is he knew it could go a year without anybody knowing about it at all. That's why he really did it. That's why he felt okay to do it. That's why he felt comfortable to do it. Because he knew nobody was going to come up and stop him. Because he knew in that moment nobody was going to say nothing to him. And a year later, he's still employed by these people. He is still a City of Rockford government worker. We have to remove these violences from our city. We have to remove these violences from our schools. It's not one bad police officer. It's the institutional violences that have been on display for decades. From pepper spraying entire hallways at Jefferson to cracking the skull of a 14-year-old freshman. Community-based actions, not state-led copy and paste statements.
Yeah, because the action that's needed, they're not going to give you a grant for it. But I wanted to say lastly, anyone with a case similar to this, it could be physical, what you could consider mental, psychological abuse. We need to stop allowing them to sweep these cases under the rug. So rather it's I don't know if you have a suggestion for it, Ari, but rather it's putting the incident under this live, going to the May 30th page and putting it under the articles and the videos from this particular case. Whatever the case may be, parents, guardians, community members, because I know the young man that was body slammed by the strength and conditioning coach. His mother tried all. She went to the school board. She went to different places to try to get a remedy. And at the end of the day, there was no remedy. So those cases aren't over. Statute of limitation, even on cases like that, I don't know what they are. But even if the statute of limitation is up, we need to know these cases. We need to not allow people to say this is an isolated incident, because that's what someone said. Yeah, what the police did was bad in that video, but that's only one case. No, this is a precedent.
There is precedent, and just, I know we've had about like 6 different last thoughts, but there is precedent to this. Just to give you a grander scheme of where we are in Rockford, there is precedent in hearing about not a Rockford Police Department officer, but Winnebago County Sheriff Deputy Frank Pubjecki, who shot 4 people who were all unarmed at the time that he shot them. Shot 4 people, all of them no weapon, no gun. All of them were unarmed at the time he fired his gun. One of them was 16-year-old crawling away on his stomach, crawling out the door, trying to crawl to safety. This was a man that was trying to work in school as a resource officer.
Frank
Pubjecki.
Those are probably the people that some of these racist teachers feel comfortable. They want to know. Like you said, did we go over the prior incidents that the police that body slammed this 14-year-old boy? Did you go over some of his prior?
The one major incident is the murder of Keith Edric Hines, I believe. The article that I read, it didn't explain exactly what the nature of the call was, but it said that this officer, Brad Lauer, responded to the call, immediately developed into a chase. He gets into a chase. Keith is trying to hop a fence, and because Brad Lauer is a thoughtless, faceless brute who is trained to subdue into compliance, he tased him in the back. He tased him. They found 2 puncture wounds in his back. Keith would fall off the fence. and then a struggle ensues. This is exactly what Brad Lauer called this case of fracturing a young child's skull, a struggle, a minor struggle, a little scuffle. And then another police officer, Eric McLean, arrives on scene and pepper sprays this man, Keith Edric Hines, at close range, directly over his face. And this man, he would eventually, they were taking him to custody, have him handcuffed, take him into custody. He would complain that he's having shortness of breath. He's complaining he can't breathe. It's physically difficult for him to breathe at that moment. They took him to the hospital and he passed away. Brad,
this is the man that's patrolling the hallways of a school that we know has a population of disgruntled youth coming out of schools like Kennedy, which are on the radar of state agencies and state news services. Other news services out of Rockford are documenting and putting out information about the brutality and the miseducation that's happening in the schools. And anyone that knows anything about sociology know that there's a direct link between the failure and the discrimination in the schools. That's what happens with these young people on the street and what they call black on black violence. And we know that is directly, that is, as we said before, that is a school to prison pipeline that's happening in Rockford.
the call is for the end to these violences, and the solution is to remove all of these police officers and to save the Rockford School District $1 million by removing these police officers. Really, when I say it like that, I might not be saving the money. It might not be saving the money.
Well, like I said, if that's the only way we can, and I hate to appeal to because I'm asking people to not allow the city to appeal to your desire to be a business owner or your desire to be a property owner in Rockford. Don't allow them to appeal to your vanity and get you to go along. At the same time that I say that, to your point, Ari, if you want to save money and you know that you don't want to see Rockford bled again, money and resources the way it did people who care, do something about it now, because as the way things are now, more than $1 million, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars that's going to cost the Rockford. If they're upset about these businesses closing up and down East State, when this discrimination lawsuit, and in order for it to it has to be bigger than people who care. It's going to be bigger than people who care, because I don't even think they had evidence and video during people who care of a child being body slammed by a officer who already had previous incidents. And so this lawsuit is going to cost you more money. And so along with $1 million from removing the police out of these schools and correcting the environment in which you think you need police. What is happening, in terms of the mass shootings and things, those police need to be stationed in a way where they can stop it from even entering into the school in the first place.
What we've seen in the video, and it's free for everybody to watch. It's free. We posted it on our page. We've posted multiple links to the article and to the YouTube video as well. But what we are able to witness in that video is indifference to student life, indifference to student safety. This has been the first live of the year, for me at least. Day, I believe, 737, if I have that correct. Day 737. This is the May 30th Lions occupation of Rockford City Hall, dedicated to the struggle to end police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice throughout Winnebago County. Day 737.